The first time I heard about the Thursday night protocol was from Sergeant Martinez, and he was dead when he told me. I'm Captain James Mitchell, 34, stationed at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs. I've been in the Army for 12 years, deployed 3 times, and I thought I'd seen everything. But what happened on that Thursday night in October changed everything I thought I knew about military operations, time, and the thin line between the living and the dead. It started with a routine security check at 11:47 p.m. I was doing my rounds when I found Martinez in the communications bunker, sitting at his station with his head in his hands. The radio was crackling with static, but there was something else underneath it. Voices that didn't sound human. "Martinez, what's going on?" I asked, but he didn't respond. When I touched his shoulder, he looked up at me with eyes that were completely black. No whites visible. "Captain," he said, his voice flat and mechanical. "The protocol has been activated. Thursday night operations are commencing. All personnel must report to their designated stations." "Martinez, you're not making sense. What protocol?" "The Thursday night protocol, sir. The one we've been following for the past 6 months. The one that keeps the base safe from what's outside the perimeter." I checked his pulse. Nothing. Martinez had been dead for at least an hour, but he was still talking, still moving, still following some protocol I'd never heard of. "Who authorized this protocol?" I demanded. "Colonel Thompson, sir. But he's been dead for 3 years." That's when I realized something was very wrong. Colonel Thompson had died in a training accident in 2020, but Martinez was talking about him like he was still in command. And Martinez himself had been dead for an hour, yet he was sitting there, giving me orders. "Martinez, look at me. You're dead. Do you understand that?" "Death is irrelevant to the protocol, sir. The mission continues regardless of personnel status. Thursday nights are when the barriers are weakest. That's when they try to get in." "Who tries to get in?" "The ones who were here before us. The ones who built this place on top of their burial grounds. The ones who've been waiting for us to make a mistake." I radioed for backup, but the communications were down. Every radio on the base was broadcasting the same static, the same voices underneath. I could hear them now, speaking in languages I didn't recognize, but somehow understanding what they were saying. "They're coming," Martinez said, standing up from his chair. "The protocol requires all living personnel to report to the main bunker. The dead will handle perimeter security." "Martinez, you're not making sense. You're dead. You can't handle security." "Captain, you don't understand. Death is just a change of assignment. We're all part of the same unit now. Living and dead. We all serve the same mission." That's when I heard the first scream. It came from the motor pool, a sound that started human but ended in something else entirely. Martinez didn't react to it, but I could see his dead eyes tracking something I couldn't see. "The perimeter has been breached," he said calmly. "Protocol requires immediate lockdown of all living personnel. Captain, you need to get to the main bunker now." I ran for the main bunker, but the base had changed. The buildings I'd known for years were different now, older, built from stone instead of concrete. The paths between them were overgrown with vegetation that shouldn't exist in Colorado. And everywhere I looked, I could see figures moving in the shadows, soldiers in uniforms from different eras, some from World War II, some from Vietnam, some from conflicts I didn't recognize. When I reached the main bunker, I found it sealed. The heavy steel door was locked from the inside, and I could hear voices on the other side. Living voices, human voices, but they were speaking in languages I didn't understand. "Open up!" I shouted, pounding on the door. "This is Captain Mitchell. I need to get in." The voices inside stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then I heard the sound of locks being turned, and the door began to open. But it wasn't the main bunker on the other side. It was a vast, dark space filled with rows of stone sarcophagi, each one marked with military insignia from different time periods. And standing in the center of the room was Colonel Thompson, who had been dead for 3 years. "Captain Mitchell," he said, his voice echoing in the stone chamber. "Welcome to the Thursday Night Protocol. You're about to learn why this base was really built, and why we've been keeping secrets from you for the past 6 months." Colonel Thompson looked exactly as I remembered him from 3 years ago, but there was something different about his eyes. They held a knowledge that no living person should possess, an understanding of things that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality. "Captain, you need to understand something," he said, gesturing to the stone sarcophagi around us. "This base wasn't built here by accident. It was built here because of what's underneath it." "What's underneath it?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. The voices I'd heard, the figures I'd seen, the way the base had changed, it all pointed to something ancient and powerful. "An ancient burial ground," Thompson replied, "but not just any burial ground. This was a sacred site where the indigenous people of this region conducted their death rituals. They believed that the spirits of the dead could communicate with the living, that death was just a transition to another form of existence. And the military built a base on top of it. Not just any base, a communications facility. The Army Corps of Engineers discovered that this location had unique electromagnetic properties. Radio signals could be transmitted over incredible distances, but there was a side effect. The signals were picking up voices that shouldn't exist. I looked around the stone chamber, noticing the military equipment that had been installed among the ancient sarcophagi. Radio transmitters, communication arrays, monitoring devices, all of it integrated with the stone architecture in a way that suggested years of careful planning. "The Thursday Night Protocol was developed to manage this phenomenon," Thompson continued. "Every Thursday night, the barriers between the living and the dead are at their weakest. That's when the spirits try to communicate with us, when they try to cross over into our world." "And Martinez? He was part of this protocol?" "Martinez was one of our best operators. He'd been working the Thursday night shifts for 6 months, learning to communicate with the spirits, learning to maintain the barriers that keep them from overwhelming the base. But he's dead now. How can he still be working?" "Death doesn't end your service, Captain. It just changes your assignment. Martinez is now part of the perimeter security team. He and the others who've died in service to the protocol continue to protect the base from the more dangerous spirits that try to breach our defenses." I thought about the figures I'd seen moving in the shadows, the soldiers in different uniforms, the voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize. They were all part of this protocol, all part of a system that had been operating for years without my knowledge. "How many people know about this?" I asked. "Everyone who's worked a Thursday night shift, everyone who's heard the voices on the radio, everyone who's seen the figures in the shadows, but most of them don't remember it the next morning. The protocol requires that certain memories be suppressed to maintain operational security. That's why I don't remember any of this. I've been working Thursday nights for months, but I don't remember what happens." "Exactly. The protocol uses a combination of psychological conditioning and supernatural influence to ensure that only the essential personnel retain their memories. Everyone else wakes up on Friday morning thinking it was just another normal night." "But why am I remembering it now?" "Because you're being promoted, Captain. You're being assigned to the protocol's command structure. You're going to learn the truth about what we're really doing here, and you're going to help us maintain the barriers that keep the living world safe from the dead. Thompson led me deeper into the stone chamber, past rows of sarcophagi that seemed to stretch on forever. Each one was marked with military insignia, but from different time periods, some from the Civil War, some from World War I, some from conflicts that hadn't happened yet. The protocol has been operating for over a century, Thompson explained. Every generation of soldiers who've served here has contributed to its development. We've learned to communicate with the spirits, to negotiate with them, to maintain a balance between the living and the dead. And what happens if the balance is broken? Then the barriers fail, and the dead come through. Not just the friendly spirits who help us maintain the protocol, but the dangerous ones, the ones who want to destroy the living world. That's what we're protecting against, Captain. That's why the Thursday night protocol exists. We reached the center of the chamber, where a massive stone altar had been set up. On it was a complex array of radio equipment, but it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. The components seemed to be made from materials that didn't exist in the normal world, and they were connected by wires that glowed with an inner light. "This is the primary communication array," Thompson said. "It's what allows us to maintain contact with the spirit world, to negotiate with the dead, to keep the barriers stable." And Martinez was operating this? Martinez was one of our best operators. He had a natural ability to communicate with the spirits, to understand their language, to negotiate with them. But something went wrong tonight. The barriers started to fail, and the dangerous spirits began to break through. That's why he's dead now. Martinez sacrificed himself to maintain the barriers. He used his own life force to strengthen the protocol, to keep the dangerous spirits from overwhelming the base. But his sacrifice was only temporary. The barriers are still weakening, and we need someone to take his place. You want me to operate this thing? I want you to understand what we're really doing here, Captain. I want you to see the bigger picture, to understand why the Thursday night protocol is so important. And then I want you to decide whether you're willing to serve in this capacity. I looked at the communication array, at the glowing wires and the strange components, and I realized that this was what the base was really for. Not training, not logistics, but communication with the dead. The entire facility was designed to facilitate this contact, to maintain the barriers between worlds, to keep the living safe from the dead. How many people have died serving this protocol? I asked. Dozens, maybe hundreds. It's hard to keep track when the records are classified and the memories are suppressed. But every death serves a purpose. Every sacrifice strengthens the barriers. Every Thursday night, we risk our lives to keep the world safe from what's on the other side. And what happens if I refuse to participate? Then you'll be reassigned, and your memories of tonight will be suppressed. You'll wake up tomorrow thinking it was just another normal Thursday night. But the protocol will continue without you, and the barriers will continue to weaken. Eventually, they'll fail completely, and the dead will come through. I thought about Martinez, about the way he'd been sitting at his station, dead but still following orders. I thought about the figures I'd seen in the shadows, the soldiers from different eras, the voices speaking in languages I didn't recognize. They were all part of this system, all part of the Thursday night protocol. What do you need me to do? I asked. First, you need to understand the full scope of the protocol. You need to see what we're really protecting against, what happens when the barriers fail. And then you need to decide whether you're willing to serve in this capacity. Thompson activated the communication array, and the stone chamber filled with a low, rhythmic hum. The glowing wires began to pulse with light, and I could feel the air around me changing, becoming charged with energy that didn't exist in the normal world. Welcome to the Thursday Night Protocol, Captain Mitchell. You're about to see what we're really fighting against. The communication array hummed to life, and the stone chamber filled with an otherworldly energy. The glowing wires pulsed with light, and I could feel the very air around me changing, becoming charged with power that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality. "Watch the main display," Thompson said, pointing to a large screen that had materialized in the air above the altar. "This shows the current status of the barriers between our world and the spirit world." The screen displayed a complex network of glowing lines, like a three-dimensional map of interconnected pathways. Most of the lines were bright and stable, but several were flickering and dim, and a few were completely dark. "The bright lines represent stable barriers," Thompson explained. "The flickering ones are weakening, and the dark ones have failed completely. When a barrier fails, the spirits can cross over into our world." "And the dark lines? What happens when they fail?" "Watch." Thompson manipulated the controls, and the display zoomed in on one of the dark lines. The image showed a section of the base perimeter, but it was different from what I remembered. The buildings were older, built from stone instead of concrete, and the vegetation was overgrown and twisted. "This is what the base looks like when the barriers fail," Thompson said. "The spirits can alter reality in their immediate vicinity. They can change the physical structure of buildings, manipulate the environment, even affect the passage of time." The display showed figures moving through the altered landscape, soldiers in uniforms from different eras, but their movements were wrong, their proportions were off, their faces were blurred and indistinct. "These are the dangerous spirits," Thompson continued. "The ones who want to destroy the living world. They're not like the friendly spirits who help us maintain the protocol. These are the ones who were trapped here when the base was built, the ones who've been waiting for their chance to escape." The display zoomed in on one of the figures, and I could see that it wasn't human. Its body was elongated and twisted, its limbs were too long, its face was a mass of shifting shadows. It was moving toward the perimeter fence, and as it approached, the fence began to dissolve, becoming transparent and insubstantial. "When the barriers fail, the spirits can cross over into the living world," Thompson said. "They can possess the living, alter their memories, even take control of their bodies. That's what we're protecting against, Captain. That's why the Thursday Night Protocol exists." The display showed the spirit crossing the perimeter, and as it did, the landscape around it began to change. The grass withered and died, the trees became twisted and blackened, the air itself seemed to darken and thicken. "And if they get through, what happens then?" "Then they start to spread. They infect the living, turning them into conduits for more spirits. They alter reality, making it easier for other spirits to cross over. Eventually, they could overwhelm the entire region, maybe even the entire country." The display showed the spirit reaching the first building, and as it touched the wall, the building began to change. The concrete became stone. The windows became dark and empty. The door became a gaping maw of shadows. "This is what happened to Martinez," Thompson said. "He was infected by one of the dangerous spirits. It took control of his body, used his knowledge of the base to weaken the barriers, tried to turn him into a conduit for more spirits. But he's still following the protocol. He's still trying to protect the base." Martinez is fighting it, Captain. He's using his training, his discipline, his loyalty to the mission to resist the spirit's influence. But he's losing. The spirit is getting stronger, and Martinez is getting weaker. Eventually, the spirit will take complete control, and Martinez will become a threat to the entire base. The display showed Martinez's current location, and I could see that he was still at his communication station. But his body was changing. His skin was becoming pale and translucent. His eyes were completely black. His movements were becoming more mechanical and less human. "We need to stop him," I said. "We need to prevent the spirit from taking complete control." "That's where you come in, Captain. You're going to help us maintain the barriers to prevent more spirits from crossing over. You're going to learn to operate the communication array, to negotiate with the friendly spirits, to keep the dangerous ones at bay. And if I can't do it, if I fail, then the barriers will continue to weaken, and more spirits will cross over. Eventually, the entire base will be overrun, and the spirits will spread to the surrounding area. The Thursday night protocol will fail, and the living world will be at risk." I looked at the communication array, at the glowing wires and the strange components, and I realized that I had no choice. I had to continue serving in the protocol, to maintain the balance between the living and the dead, to protect both worlds from the chaos that would result if the barriers failed. "I'll continue to serve," I said. "I'll maintain the balance. I'll protect both worlds." "Welcome to the Thursday Night Protocol, Captain Mitchell. You're now a permanent member of the team." As the weeks passed, I became more skilled at operating the communication array. I learned to communicate with the friendly spirits, to negotiate with them, to maintain the barriers that kept both worlds stable. And I began to understand the true nature of the responsibility I had taken on. The Thursday Night Protocol wasn't just about maintaining the balance between the living and the dead. It was about preserving the very fabric of reality itself. The barriers between worlds were what kept both worlds stable, and if they failed, both worlds would become chaotic and unstable. And I realized that I had become part of something much larger than myself. I was no longer just Captain James Mitchell, Army officer. I was a guardian of the barriers, a protector of the balance, a member of the Thursday Night Protocol. The protocol was my life now, and I would serve in this capacity for as long as I was needed. And when my time came, I would join the others who had served before me, continuing to protect the balance from beyond the grave. The Thursday Night Protocol was more than just a military operation. It was a sacred duty, a responsibility to maintain the balance between worlds, to protect both the living and the dead from the chaos that would result if the barriers failed. And I was proud to serve in this capacity, to be part of something so important, so necessary, so vital to the stability of both worlds. The Thursday Night Protocol would continue, and I would continue to serve, maintaining the balance between the living and the dead, protecting both worlds from the chaos that would result if the barriers failed. That was my duty, my responsibility, my sacred trust, and I would not fail. Not.